You're listening to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. Here, I share stories from real people navigating the adventure that I call adulting. Are you ready? Me too. Let's do this. Hello, friends. In this episode, I'm going to introduce you to my friend Jessica Hammock, and we're going to talk about how she made the decision to move across the US of A for a relationship, even though her family thought she was making a huge mistake. And they did not keep that opinion to themselves. Anyway, feeling very daytime TV with this introduction, but for real, this is a great story. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's do it. Jessica Hammock, welcome to The Art of Imperfect Adulting.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Are you ready for a fun chat?
Sure. Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it. So I ask everybody at the start of the conversation, pretty much everybody, what part of the world they call home. So tell us where you're talking to us from today.
Currently in north of Dallas, Texas.
Texas. Yay. All
Yes.
right. Before we dive into the topic of the day, I want to learn a little bit more about you, just about you, and make a connection. Tell us about your life outside of work, maybe a little bit about the important people in your life. You can talk about your hobbies, your pets, whatever you'd like to share a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Right now, the thing that occupies most of my time is I have a 3-year-old, and so we are in the I do it myself stage. So there's a lot more reverse engineering of time that you do when you have a 3-year-old, and they're in that stage.
I don't know that I ever actually grew out of that phase for myself. I'm still in that phase. Leave me alone. I'll figure it out.
But we spend a lot. I love to bake, and so now we spend a lot of time baking together. That's our thing. The other day, she told me, "Mom, you have to put your apron on to be safe when you bake." Got it.
Very cute. What kind of things do you guys like to bake?
We usually do cakes. That's more my specialty is cakes, but we've been experimenting with other things, pancakes. She has an obsession with donuts. We have not tried that yet, but she got a donut maker recently for her birthday. So
That's
that's next
good.
on our list. Yes.
So I think donuts, and if you buy them in the store, they're fried. So
Yes, they are.
that'll be a brave project. Fry with a 3-year-old. I mean, you can do it. I got
Yes.
faith in you. But if you call me back and say
We,
no, we
you
went with a
know,
baked.
right. Well, and we started when she was probably a year and a half old. She's always been by my side when I cook or when I bake. And we started using a griddle for some things, and she was in there
Yeah,
flipping burgers with the griddle. So she seems to be pretty. I really think kids take cues from their parents. So if
yeah.
I'm not dysregulated or reactive about it, she tends not to be.
No, absolutely. And there's tremendous. I gave my kids, tools to play with and stuff like that at a very early age because I was of the belief that there's actually a book that I read when my kids were little. It's called The Blessings of a Skin Knee, right? So like
Mhm.
a 2-year-old can do a lot less damage than a 14-year-old, and so it's
Yeah.
scary to give kids scary stuff, and we're not going to throw them in the fire, but little lessons along the way can be helpful. Not
Yeah.
everybody thinks that, and I'm not offering it as advice, but that did work.
Yeah.
Off and on, it worked pretty well for us. All right, so the topic of the day is not cooking with 3-year-olds, although that is a great topic. But it is, we are going to talk about how you made the decision many, many, many years ago to move across the country for a relationship for a boy. How
Oh
does that
boy.
sound?
Sounds really like a young and dumb thing I would have done.
All right, well, let's pack it up. Let's unpack it. Let's start with this. How long ago was this story unfolded? How old were you? Where were you living? How long had you been in this relationship at that time?
So we had started, it was about 20 years ago. So
Okay.
I've officially, according to some of the clients I work with and people, they're like, "You're old." I'm like, "I reject that." But anyways, at the time, I had grown up in the same area of town, stayed there all to college. I went to college in Florida and then went back home for some things. And I had met him online while I was in college. So I did not have a lot of travel experience. I grew up on a farm, and my family, we just didn't travel. We had responsibilities at the farm that didn't let us do that. So my first travel experiences were in college doing things like a choir tour and some missions work and other things, but I really had not ventured very far outside of the boundary lines, of life. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden I'm picking everything up and moving what felt like for sure across the country. It's a good solid 24-hour drive away.
Okay. So
So,
you grew up on a farm, which
mhm.
that is not an imaginary leash tying you to the land. Like you are the custodian of all the animals and all the all the farmers I know have known in my life.
Yes.
That's where they are. That's where they are. They're
Mhm.
not jetting off on long vacations necessarily. And so then you came from there to Florida to go to school, and then 20 years ago you were doing online dating.
eHarmony had just come out. It was, and I didn't even get on to date. Honestly, I got on because I wanted to prove their system wrong.
Okay.
Because they were doing, my friends, like, you're really into learning about things and people, and they have this profile. And so I was like, well, I should see what they say about me because surely it can't be right. Turns out they had a pretty good system, actually.
I'm
And
going to
so
test it because I know they're wrong. And what were you going to do if they were wrong? Were you going to like
I don't
send an
know.
email like you're
Probably
wrong?
you're wrong. Turns out they're pretty good, actually. They kind of knew what they were talking about. But with that, you got 7 days worth of free matches, and
Okay.
so it was interesting because my very first two matches had the exact same first and last name, and one of them was in Texas and one of them was in California, and I'm like, is this a sign? Like, is this a sign
Right.
I should explore what this looks like? So I did. I started talking to him. I'm currently still with the guy I
Right.
moved across the country for. We'll celebrate 18 years of marriage on Monday. And he he says, I paid 49.95 for you. And I'm like, that is the best 49.95 you've ever experienced in your whole entire life.
That's so funny. There's a lot of funny stuff in there because that's pretty cheap for online dating platforms these days. But the price has gone up for a
Yes.
successful connection.
Yes.
But all right, so you're in college, you go in to test the eHarmony algorithm, and which is very charming. Then you go home to the farm
Yes.
in between, and then okay, and so you meet online. And does he invite you to move to Texas, or what is the push to move to Texas?
Partly, well, a couple things. I knew that I didn't want to establish my life back home where I grew up in Pennsylvania. I love it to go back and visit now, but you get a taste of the big wide world, man, and you
Yeah.
want to keep going with it. And more because I wanted more opportunities to explore and see what life was like. Just cultures, people, opportunities, growth. He had some health challenges, and I knew that for some of the health challenges he had, living where we currently live was the best option for him in access to resources and doctors and things he had already established.
Okay.
So part of the reason I moved here was just because it was easier for our relationship and his medical situation that he had access a history established.
Yep.
Um, and I came to visit once or twice before I moved here, and I was like, yeah, I kind of like it here. Like there was there was a feel about the area that culturally I would say there was a lot of the same belief systems about the people in this area and the region that I'm in. They were very similar to where I grew up, but the opportunities were a lot different.
Okay. That's really interesting. I like that. I like that you saw the similarities. So let me know if I'm wrong about this because I pieced this together from what you told me before the interview. But not everybody in your life was a big fan of this relationship or this decision.
No.
Tell me more about that.
Honestly, my family and even his family and some of my close friends thought it was a really pretty dumb mistake to move. One, just not having it, family and extended family was a very big part of growing up, and family having connections to opportunities and resources.
Okay.
And I think the fear was if you go down there, you don't know anybody and you also have no backup support system. So if this goes south, like really south, beyond Texas south kind of thing, well, you're alone. You're by yourself. You're a day's drive away from anybody. And then it takes a lot of resources or support to either fly you back here or get you to where you need to safety. You're literally leaving everything and everyone to go for a man and his family, and you don't know what that's going to actually look like. When you live with somebody, it's not like you're moving across town and you can still come home. And it,
So they were concerned, it sounds like put this in my words. They were concerned that you wouldn't be able to come back, that they wouldn't be able to help you, that it would be expensive and hard if
yeah,
the relationship didn't work out. So you had been to Texas to hang with him and see the environment. Had they had much contact or chance to get to know him at all?
not really. And the same was true for his side of the family back to me. It was like, we don't really know you. Like, what, you could be out to break our son's heart. It was, I mean, this was 20 years ago, so online dating was not really a
That's what I
thing.
was going to say. What did they think about the fact that you met him
Yeah.
online?
Both sides of the family had. I think that was the hardest part about this is that we met online. So there wasn't like, "Hey Joe, how's your so and so? Do you happen to know this girl and
Right.
what's her family like and there was nobody they could call to get the scoop on who I was with.
And right. Yeah.
And there was
No,
a lot
that's
of,
fair.
there's a lot of families and cultures that utilize that skill set and resource to call on somebody locally to figure out like how do we help our kids navigate this, but we're
No,
adults now.
absolutely. Even in cultures that do arranged marriages, right? You're using that proxy of the person who does the checking,
Yes.
and so there's somebody to do. So that is. But I do think back in time. I mean, I think that so because I got to skip online dating like
Hmm.
like it was just coming up. But I know so many people who have been married and met other people, and I make friends online now and all these things. But back in the day, back in the old days, and we talk about the old days here, we're talking about like the 1990s.
Yes.
um, I do remember like my friends who were going on trips with people they met online and thinking, so really? Like,
Yeah.
what does this
I
mean?
know, and I was an anomaly in that. I knew we met online, so I did like I was a weirdo of this part. I did a whole bunch of research. Like, I knew he was going to a church, so I called the church and talked to the pastor. And I knew I had run a background check on him to check like criminal records and any history that might have come up. And then I got his close friends. He had some adult friends that were like second adult godparent type people here, and I would call them and talk to them about him
So
and be like,
you had done a
yeah.
lot of research. You were not nervous. All right.
Yeah.
So did you though consider, like as this was going on, because your family was not in full support of it, they were a little bit nervous, but did you consider not doing it? Did you say, you know what? Maybe they're right. There's a piece of me that's like, I'll just settle and stay and do the next thing.
I th I think that there was always some hesitation, but I also felt like I didn't wasn't going to stay there
Okay.
either. I had a lot of, so I went to school for teaching and I had like probably 4 or 5 offers to go teach at different parts of the country and then to go teach in the Cayman Islands. So I always
Ooh.
felt, yeah, I know. I was like, dude, man, you should be privileged. I came here and ditched Cayman Islands for you.
Yeah.
But I always felt like I wasn't going to land back home the same way. And I think that was a harder piece for them to reconcile with. Like, it's not just that you're leaving us for a man. I think it's just like you're leaving us for good. No matter where I would have gone or what I would have done, I feel like I still would have um, received some pushback.
That's fair. Okay, I think that is a good story. All right. So now if this was a romance novel, right? Like if we were writing a romance novel, you would have moved to Texas, discovered that he was a secret multi-billionaire, and everything would have been easy peasy and you a fairy tale, right? This is real life though. This is real life. You had to
Yes.
find a job, you had to figure out where to live. So I know from the story the information you gave me before that did have a job lined up before you moved, but how did it actually work out in the beginning? Like, what was the beginning of this move like? Because it is, you get in your car, you load up everything that you've got, you drive for, I mean, probably over 24. Texas is huge.
Yeah.
Like, so you drive all the way down into
Hmm.
Texas. How does it actually work out in the beginning?
I ended it up. There was some friends of his, like I said, that I had met beforehand, so I ended up sleeping on their couch for a while. Um, I was tried to get several jobs here. They did not want to hire me as teacher in the mainstream public schools because of my degree. So I ended up working for a lot less money at preschools in different places. I finally got a job at a special needs school, and I did at that time had enough conversation with relationships and people through phone conversations. This was really before FaceTime and a lot of that stuff was taking off. But I ended up only having the job for like 3 days. And
Okay.
the lady was like, I don't know you. You're like you this is the oddest thing. I'm telling you what. She's like, I can never tell what you're thinking. I can never tell what, like you carry this thing about you. I can't tell what you're feeling and you're emotional. And it was working with special needs children. And I don't, it literally was the catalyst to get me down here, honestly, because everybody that knows me knows that I'm super emotionally expressive, and Jessica had no skill set at that time to like kind of keep a straight face, so everybody knew what I was feeling. The heart on your sleeve
Face was
kind of.
your face was running the closed captions of your
Oh
thoughts.
yeah, yeah. And you could say my whole body would shift. Like everybody knew what I was thinking or feeling. So this woman to say like I can't tell what you're thinking, I can't read you. Everybody's like, are we talking about the same person? Like it was this whole thing. So after 3 days, I was like on a friend's couch with no job and
So, and you moved down. So that I want to emphasize this for people. Like one of the things that gave you the courage to move down is that you had this job in the pocket, right? Like you were like,
yeah,
I'm going to move down, but I've got a job, so I've got some
yeah,
security. This is a through line of this story that your family was, scared about the financial resources that would be available to you, which is important to think about all
yes,
the time. 3 days you get fired, and so you're unemployed and you're sleeping on the couch of a friend and you've moved across the country for a guy. I gotta think here that there was a moment at 2 o'clock in the morning or 1 in the afternoon where you're looking in the corner and you're like, what have I done?
yes. It's really uncomfortable to be in that spot. It's very
Yeah.
vulnerable to be in that spot and think like, did I make the right decision? Can I, and can I even go home? Because both of our families, his and mine, are that old school thing. Like you work hard, you don't get fired from jobs, you show up, you put in all the stuff. I've never been fired from any other job in my life ever. So it was just really an uncomfortable place to be for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Faith is very important to me, and I felt like I had to use that resource at the time to get some sense of peace to decide like what do I do?
And what you did was stayed.
Yeah, I stayed. I stayed. And
Stayed.
I used a lot of resources at that time. Like who can I talk to? How can I talk to them? What do I need?
All right. So yeah, no, it is like you are in my head. The next question that I had for you is it can be so much easier to do hard things when we have a strong support system. And that's true for so many things, right? That's true for, learning a new skill or picking up a new hobby or moving, right? And not having the support of your family, especially it sounds like this was very much you had a strong community in those things. What support did you have that you
Mhm.
used? And then looking back all this time, what would have, if there's anything that would have been helpful, what would that have been?
I had to lay aside that pride, especially as a young adult, like that I had the right answer. I think I set out with so much confidence, like, yes, it'll be fine, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. And then all of a sudden it wasn't fine. And so for me to recalibrate to say, okay, well, what can I do? I can't get a job teaching, so what can I do? Like what's sustainable? Where will my skills fit? Being willing to have some hard conversations about, and it's not that I wouldn't do any job. I was a very hard worker before that. I had 3 jobs in high school and in college when I very first started college. And so I was working all the time. It wasn't the work factor. It was if I'm going to work, let me apply myself at a job that has a career path attached to it. Not, I don't want to just go get a job to have a job right in this moment because I can
Yeah.
do that. But also, I know that's not going to serve me well because I'm going to be consumed with work that I won't be available to find interviews or get connected. So I think really expanding my mindset to be willing to look at other career options for what skills I did have
Okay.
um, was something that I had to work through. I wish that that would have been um, a more readily available concept to me. like that ingenuity or entrepreneurial aspect of like, how can I take what I have and make it work? I feel like that was a struggle piece that I had to work through. But I utilized all the people that were in his network down here of friends and
Okay.
supports to say, do you know anybody? Is there any programs down here or opportunities you think I might be a good fit for? And it ended up the people whose couch I was staying on, their children were, at the time, they were fostering some children, and those children were receiving support from a social work organization in the school system. So I was able to get hired on in the social work organization and work at one of the local schools down the street. And that helped me develop a set of network and resources, not just with that organization, but also with the school system that was local down here.
That is amazing. I think there's a couple things that you touched on there that are really, really, really fun to think about, which is like one is that unique sense of I've got the world by the tail that we have in our young 20s. It's like, I
Mhm.
got this. What could possibly go wrong? And and the total confidence that we know enough to do it. Um, and then you look back and you're like, wow, I had no idea what I was doing. And it is a fun time to be alive, but it is funny to look back on that and be like, that is really interesting how confident I was then with the,
Yes.
right. And then I think that you highlight you like when we one of the things that I feel at this point in my life is that we do a bad job of preparing kids and teenagers in early 20s for the fact that there are speed bumps coming and on those skills of like adjusting and pivoting and finding new ways. And this is, we tell it where it's like, yeah, you check this box, you go to school and you get your degree, everything will be fine.
Hmm.
Right. And I don't meet very many people where that is actually that experience. And so, but it's not a fun process to discover it and then to have to retool. So the way you did it to look around for the network that was available to you, that was willing to help you is really very innovative. I give you a gold star.
Thanks.
I give you a
But
gold star.
like when you're getting hungry and you're worried about like, I don't know, for me in the sense of like, I can't live on this couch forever,
Right.
right? So what options do I have? And I knew enough to realize that working at a fast food restaurant or working at a retail shop wasn't going to provide for the rent at a
Okay.
place. I had done some digging on like, okay, what's it going to take for me to get out? And what is rent? What are utilities? What are those things? Like going from living at your parents' house to all of a sudden being responsible for all these things in a completely different area. It's not like I said, calling on, hey, so and so knows somebody and they have an extra room available for you, or you can rent an apartment here, you can stay there, because one, there was that not connection with family down here, but two, it was a much bigger geographical area that just did it was we weren't in small town America anymore.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure all those things out, there were so many things that I had to figure out on my own because I had made the decision to say I'm going to do this. And I think about like my child now, like I would be terrified if I had sent her out to do if she was doing some of the things I did. I feel like what you said, preparing our kids
Yeah.
in a different way and a different skill set to know things. But you also know in the early 2000s, especially like the internet and the resources, some of that stuff didn't take off. You couldn't just get
Right.
on a phone or device. I didn't have a smartphone. So you couldn't just get on a device and like Google a bunch of stuff, look up a bunch of stuff, and have all these resources around to you. You had to make phone calls or go travel to visit locations
Yes.
to see what was available.
Yes.
It wasn't like you can pull up apartment finders and look at a bunch of reviews and
No, yeah. Look,
graphics. Like they didn't have that.
right. You wanted a job. You walked in and asked if they were hiring. Registering for classes when I was in college, you would walk in and sign up, and then
Yes.
you had to come back and see if your name was on a piece of paper, like if you
Yes.
got it. There's a joke that goes around about not having Google Maps or direct
Mhm.
GPS when you're in the car. It's like driving across the country with a map like a
And
pirate.
literally, you printed out. I remember when we came down, like we printed out MapQuest
Yep.
Good old step by step. And then if there was construction, man, you better have I had the big
The
old
Atlas.
atlas.
We took a road trip in during lockdown with my family, and we had, we bought an Atlas and we threw it at the back of the car. We were in, we were lost in the middle of nowhere at one point, and no signal, nothing. And we pulled out the Atlas, and my kids were like, "What is this artifact from history?" Like, and I was like, "Well, here's the thing, right? This is a map,
Mhm.
and so we're going to figure out where we are using this printed document." So, and
Yeah.
or the other thing, like if I had the nerve to stop and ask for directions from a
Oh,
human
yeah.
being, they thought that was like really, they're like, "What?
Yes.
This is a thing you can do?" But
Right.
it was a different time. So you're sleeping on the couch. You're in love with this guy. We know that the relationship works out. How long were you on the couch? Like, were you boyfriend and girlfriend at this point, or were you committed to
Yes.
getting married?
No, we had gotten engaged, so we
Okay.
were committed. When I after college, I moved back home, and we broke up for like 2 days, and we decided like it just life was not worth living without each other, and so that's kind of why I committed to coming here, because we had decided like no, this was the right answer for us. Being apart was not. Um, so we were engaged, but we did not get married for 2.5 years until after I moved here. Um, Mainly because I was wanting to be established in a little bit more in the career field of something. It took me, I believe, 6 months or so to save up enough money to get off the couch and get into an
Okay.
apartment. I had to buy a new vehicle during that time, which was it's a whole nother podcast episode. But let me tell you something. I learned a lot of life lessons from that, and now I'm fabulous at buying cars. But I was definitely taken in that whole ordeal.
Aw.
Um, but you know, and also right after I kind of gotten established was when like the teacher market and a lot of hiring teachers in education really tanked in Texas. So I was having to plan to stay a lot longer than I initially anticipated because Texas is very proud and biased about their educators. So they didn't want to hire somebody that had a degree from Florida unless you went through all this
Ah.
other certifications and all this other education. So it took me a lot longer to even recalibrate. Okay, I have a job, I have a path, I still want to move into education, but what am I going to do? So 6 months was a short term. I found an apartment. I got a vehicle that would pass inspection in Texas, uh,
Sure.
that would and and had money consistently, excuse me, coming in and working through things. But it was another 2 years until we got married.
2 years
So
until you got married. Is your family on board with the relationship hopefully
yes,
now? Okay, so
yes,
they came
yes.
around. They realized that
They
this
came
was the
around.
real deal.
They came to the wedding. There was a lot of repair work done emotionally, and they came to the wedding, and we've been back and forth to visit multiple times, and things are good.
Yeah, I mean, I
You
think
know,
that I mean, it sounds like even though they were not fully supportive, it sounds like at least part of their intention was based on love and care.
yeah, yeah,
People can really hurt each other starting from a spot in love and care. So that's not an excuse, but it does sound like
yes, yeah,
that's where they were. All right. So in a minute, we're going to do the final questions, but I want to give you a chance to tell people what you do these days,
yeah.
and how you support people and how they can find you online.
Sure. So I took all those skill sets and became a licensed trauma therapist.
As one
And
does. That's the
yeah,
straight line.
right, yeah. I work in trauma therapy if you're in Texas, but I do identity coaching for people, for women specifically, who have lost sight of their identity and who they are. I say if you've watched the movie Runaway Bride, I help you figure out what kind of eggs you like.
Okay.
And Julia Roberts didn't know. She said yes to everything and everyone because she didn't know who she was and what she liked. So I help women figure that out. And through coaching and different things that I do online, they can find me. Jessica Vibrant Hammock is either on Instagram or Facebook, or vibrantvoice.life is my website. And so you can reach out to me at any of those places.
Very cool. I will put all of those links in the show notes. It also goes in the email that I send to everybody who's a subscriber at Imperfect Adulting. So everybody should do that. You have a wonderful offer gift for the audience,
Yes.
which is a first aid stress relief tool, a fast way to release emotions in a tense situation and environment. And there's a link in the show notes and in the email. So make sure people sign up. And now we're going to close up. I'm going to ask you 3 random questions, rapid fire questions, just for fun. The idea is that you answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Are you a person that follows a strict morning routine? And if so, do you want to share what it is?
Not strict because I have a toddler, but loose morning routine is some form of meditation or prayer um, component, and then affirmations and kind of setting my mind up right for the day. And then it moves more into body care,
Okay.
any supplements, facial care that I do, and kind of setting myself up for that way. And then any supplements that I take, and then moves into breakfast. But that is more getting my mind right first, is my big thing that typically I do no matter what happens.
Very cool. All right. I like the way that is like a routine
Hmm.
that you can adjust based
Hmm.
on when the kid is getting up or what's happening
Yes.
no day, whatever. All right. So this is an impossible question. It's a terrible question. I'm asking it anyway. If you had to pick one movie as a favorite movie from all of the movies that you've
Uh,
ever seen, what is the first one that comes to mind?
the Devil Wears Prada.
I love it. Okay, very good. Okay, good job. Very good job. Very good job. All right, very good. Now, here we go. What is the scariest thing that you've ever chosen to do for fun?
Oh, I don't know. What's
Okay.
the scariest thing I've ever done? I will say this, like I went to South Africa on a mission trip, and that was for, it had a purpose, but it was also for fun.
Okay.
Um, and it was scary because, man, we showed up at some villages, and it's customary, like you cannot say no when they offer to feed you.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things we ate that I not know what I was eating.
That all right. That is actually a very good answer. South Africa is a really really long trip from the
Yes.
United States, and it is that is I bet you that would be if that would be there were some funny moments there I bet where you were like I don't know what this is and I'd really rather know and I'm not allowed to ask and
I
you're just
I do
pushing
know that one
around.
I do know that one time we had lung of lamb. I do know that one
Oh my
time that
goodness.
was one of the meals we had, and I was just, yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
lived. I lived. I
You know what?
lived.
I would
That's
rather not know. Honestly,
yes.
in that situation, I would rather not know. And I've had some very exotic food type things where people are like, do you want to know? And I'm like, nope, I don't, because I don't want to have a forethought. And I'm going to say
Yep.
yes anyway. So I'd rather not have the mental battle. So that's the way to do it. That is an excellent story and a truly good experience. That's it. Jessica Hammock, thank you so much for being a
Yes.
wonderful guest today.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Thank you for listening today. I hope that you enjoy the show. And before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Obviously, subscribe wherever you're listening to the show. Listen to more episodes. That'd be great. Obvi again, please write a review and tell your friends about the show. That truly is a great help for getting the show in front of new people. Okay, but more fun for you yourself. Head over to imperfectadulting.com and join the email community. You'll get some free stuff right away, and that way you'll begin to get the emails about the podcast. This includes the links for the special offers from the guests, and it's the only way to get that. Also, if you aren't in the mood to listen, I actually include an article directly in those emails. Whee! Now, if you love this and you crave more time with me, Amy, as a coach, a mentor, or just adultier adult, numero uno, check out The Village. If you have a story you want to share with the listeners, I'd love to hear from you. I have an open application. Just let me know you want it. And that's a wrap for today. Until next time, remember, the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now, I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that may not mean that you're lost. It may just mean that you're on your way. This is Amy Stone, signing off. The Imperfect Adulting podcast is created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy does not intend or hold herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level.